Good evening, my friends. It's Indiana Holmes, and we continue tonight with the Three Musketeers, Chapter 33, Soubrette and Mistress. Meantime, as we have said, despite the cries of his conscience and wise counsels of Athos, D'Artagnan became hourly more in love with Milady. Thus, he never failed to pay his diurnal court to her. And the self-satisfied Gascon was convinced that sooner or later she could not fail to respond. One day, when he arrived with his head in the air and as light at heart as a man who waits for a shower of gold, he found the soubrette under the gateway of the hotel. But this time the pretty Kitty was not contented with touching him as he passed. She took him gently by the hand. Good, thought D'Artagnan. She is charged with some message for me from her mistress. She is about to appoint some rendezvous of which she had not courage to speak. And he looked down at the pretty girl with the most triumphant air imaginable. I wish to say 3 words to you, Monsieur Chevalier, stammered the soubrette. Speak, my child, said D'Artagnan. I listen. Here, impossible. That which I have to say is too long, and above all, too secret. Well, what is to be done? If Monsieur Chevalier would follow me, said Kitty timidly. Where you please, my dear child. Come then. And Kitty, who had not let go of the hand of D'Artagnan, led him up a little dark winding staircase, and after ascending about 15 steps, opened a door. Come in here, Monsieur Chevalier, said she. Here we shall be alone and can talk. And whose room is this, my dear child? It is mine, Monsieur Chevalier. It communicates with my mistress by that door. But you need not fear. She will not hear what we say. She never goes to bed before midnight. D'Artagnan cast a glance around him. The little apartment was charming for its taste and neatness, but in spite of himself, his eyes were directed to the door which Kitty said led to Milady's chamber. Kitty guessed what was passing in the mind of the young man, and heaved a deep sigh. You love my mistress, then, very dearly, Monsieur Chevalier? Said she. Oh, more than I can say, Kitty. I am mad for her. Kitty breathed a second sigh. Alas, monsieur, said she, that is too bad. What the devil do you see so bad in it? Said D'Artagnan. Because, monsieur, replied Kitty, my mistress loves you not at all. Hein? Said D'Artagnan. Can she have charged you to tell me so? Oh, no, monsieur, but out of the regard I have for you, I have taken the resolution to tell you so. Much obliged, my dear Kitty, but for the intention only, for the information must agree, is not likely to be at all agreeable. That is to say, you don't believe what I have told you. Is it not so? We have always some difficulty in believing such things, my dear. Were it only from self-love. Then you don't believe me. I confess that unless you deign to give me some proof of what you advance, what do you think of this? Kitty drew a little note from her bosom. For me, said D'Artagnan, seizing the letter. No, for another. For another? Yes. His name? His name, cried D'Artagnan. Read the address. Monsieur le Comte de Wardes. The resemblance of the scene at Saint-Germain presented itself to the mind of the presumptuous Gascon. As quickly thought, he tore open the letter in spite of the cry which Kitty uttered on seeing what he was doing and going to do, or rather what he was actually doing now. Oh, good Lord, Monsieur Chevalier, said she. What are you doing? I said D'Artagnan, nothing. And he read, You have not answered my first note. Are you indisposed, or have you forgotten the glances you favored me at the ball of Madame de Guise? You have an opportunity now. Count, do not allow it to escape. D'Artagnan became very pale. He was wounded in his self-love. He thought that it was in his love. Poor dear Monsieur d'Artagnan, said Kitty, in a voice full of compassion, and pressing anew the young man's hand. You pity me, little one, said D'Artagnan. Oh, yes, and with all my heart, for I know what it is to be in love. You know what it is to be in love, said D'Artagnan, looking at her for the first time with much attention. Alas, yes. Well then, instead of pitying me, you would do much better to assist me in avenging myself on your mistress. And what sort of revenge would you take? I would triumph over her and supplant my rival. I will never help you in that, Monsieur Chevalier, said Kitty warmly. And why not? Demanded D'Artagnan. For two reasons. What ones? The first is that my mistress will never love you. How do you know that? You have cut her to the heart. I? In what can I have offended her? I, who, ever since I have known her, have lived at her feet like a slave. Speak, I beg you. I will never confess that, but to the man who should read the bottom of my soul. D'Artagnan looked at Kitty for a second time. The young girl had freshness and beauty which many duchesses would have purchased with their coronets. Kitty, said he, I will read to the bottom of your soul whenever you like. Don't let that disturb you. And he gave her a kiss, at which the poor girl became as red as a cherry. Oh, no, said Kitty. It is not me you love. It is my mistress you love. You told me so just now. And does that hinder you from letting me know the second reason? The second reason, Monsieur de Chevalier, replied Kitty, emboldened by the kiss in the first place, and still further by the expression of his eyes of the young man, is that in love, everyone is for herself. Then only D'Artagnan remembered the languishing glances of Kitty, her constantly meeting him at the antechamber, the corridor, or on the stairs, those touches of the hand every time she met him, and her deep sighs. But absorbed by his desire to please the great lady, he had disdained the soubrette. He whose game is the eagle takes no heed of the sparrow. But this time our Gascon saw at a glance all the advantage to be derived from the love which Kitty had just confessed so innocently or so boldly. The interception of letters addressed to the Comte de Wardes, news on the spot, entrance at all hours into Kitty's chamber, which was contiguous to her mistress's. The perfidious deceiver was, as may plainly be perceived, already sacrificing in intention the poor girl in order to obtain Milady willy-nilly. Well, said he to the young girl, are you willing, my dear Kitty, that I should give you a proof of that love which you doubt? What love? Asked the young girl. Of that which I am ready to feel toward you. And what is that proof? Are you willing that I should this evening pass with you the time I generally spend with your mistress? Oh, yes, said Kitty, clapping her hands very willingly. Well, then, come here, my dear, said D'Artagnan, establishing himself in an easy chair. Come, and let me tell you that you are the prettiest soubrette I ever saw. And he did tell her so much, and so well, that the poor girl, who asked nothing better than to be believed, did him and did believe him. Nevertheless, to D'Artagnan's great astonishment, the pretty Kitty defended herself resolutely. Time passes quickly when it passed in the attacks and defenses. Midnight sounded, and almost at the same time the bell was rung in Milady's chamber. Good God, cried Kitty, there is my mistress, calling me. Go directly. D'Artagnan rose, took his hat, as if it had been his intention to obey. Then, opening quickly the door of a large closet instead of that leading to the staircase, he buried himself amid the robes and dressing gowns of Milady. What are you doing? Cried Kitty. D'Artagnan, who had secured the key, shut himself up in the closet without reply. Well? Cried Milady in a sharp voice. Are you asleep, that you don't answer when I ring? And D'Artagnan heard the door of the communication opened violently. Here I am, Milady, here I am, cried Kitty, springing forward to meet her mistress. Both went into the bedroom, and as the door of the communication remained open, D'Artagnan could hear Milady for some time scolding her maid. she was at length appeased, and the conversation turned upon him, while Kitty was assisting her mistress. "Well," said Milady, "I have not seen our Gascon this evening." "What, Milady? Has he not come?" said Kitty. "Can he be inconsistent before being happy?" "Oh, no, he must have been prevented by Monsieur de Travelle or Monsieur de Assart. I understand my game, Kitty. I have this one safe. What will you do with him, madame?" "What will I do with him? Be easy, Kitty. There is something between that man and me that he is quite ignorant of. He nearly made me lose my credit with his Eminence. Oh, I will be revenged. I believe that madame loved him. I love him. I detest him. An idiot who held the life of Lord de Winter in his hands and did not kill him, by which I missed 300,000 livres income." "That's true," said Kitty. "Your son was the only heir of his uncle, and until his majority you would have had the enjoyment of his fortune." D'Artagnan shuddered to morrow at hearing this suave creature reproach him with that sharp voice which he took pains to conceal in conversation, for not having killed a man whom he had seen load her with kindness. "For all this," continued Milady, "I should long ago have revenged myself on him if, and I don't know why, the cardinal had not requested me to conciliate him." "Oh, yes, madame, has not conciliated that little woman he is so fond of." "What, the mercer's wife of the Rue des Fosses? Has he not already forgotten she ever existed? Fine vengeance, that's my faith." A cold sweat broke from D'Artagnan's brow. Why, this woman was a monster. He resumed his listening, but unfortunately the toilet was finished. "That will do," said Milady. "Go into your own room, and tomorrow endeavor again to get me an answer to the letter I gave you." "For Monsieur de Wardes?" said Kitty. "To be sure, for Monsieur Wardes. Now, there is one," said Kitty, "who appears to me quite different sort of a man from that poor Monsieur d'Artagnan." "Go to bed, mademoiselle," said Milady. "I don't like comments." D'Artagnan heard the door close, then the noise of the two bolts by which Milady fastened herself in on her side. But, as softly as possible, Kitty turned the key of the lock, and then D'Artagnan opened the closet door. "Oh, good Lord!" said Kitty in a low voice. "What is the matter with you? How pale you are!" "The abominable creature," murmured D'Artagnan. "Silence, silence, begone!" said Kitty. "There is nothing but wainscot between my chamber and Milady's. Every word that is uttered in one can be heard in the other." "That is exactly the reason I won't go," said D'Artagnan. "What?" said Kitty, blushing. "Or at least I will go later." He drew Kitty to him. She had less motive to resist. Resistance would make so much noise. Therefore Kitty surrendered. It was a movement of vengeance upon Milady. D'Artagnan believed it right to say that vengeance is the pleasure of the gods. With a little more heart, he might have been contented with his new conquest. But the principal features of his character were ambition and pride. It must, however, be confessed in his justification that the first use he made of his influence over Kitty was to try to find out what had become of Madame Blancheneux. But the poor girl swore upon the crucifix to D'Artagnan that she was entirely ignorant on that head, her mistress never admitting to her into half her secrets. Only she believed she could say she was not dead. As to the cause which was near making Milady lose her credit with the cardinal, Kitty knew nothing about it. But this time D'Artagnan was better informed than she was, as he had seen Milady on board a vessel at the moment he was leaving England. He suspected that it was, almost without a doubt, on account of the diamond studs. But what was the clearest in all of this was the true hatred, the profound hatred, the inveterate hatred of Milady was increased by his not having killed her brother-in-law. D'Artagnan came the next day to Milady, and, finding her in a very ill humor, had no doubt that it was lack of an answer from Monsieur de Wardes that provoked her thus. Kitty came in, but Milady was very cross with her. The poor girl ventured a glance at D'Artagnan, which said, "See how I suffer on your account." Toward the end of the evening, however, the beautiful lioness became milder. She smilingly listened to the soft speeches of D'Artagnan, and even gave him her hand to kiss. D'Artagnan departed, scarcely knowing what to think, but he was a youth who did not easily lose his head while continuing to pay his court to Milady. He framed a little plan in his mind. He found Kitty at the gate, and as soon as the preceding evening went up to her chamber. Kitty had been accused of negligence and severely scolded. Milady could not at all comprehend the silence of the Comte de Wardes, and she ordered Kitty to come at 9 o'clock in the morning to take a third letter. D'Artagnan made Kitty promise to bring him that letter on the following morning. The poor girl promised all her lover desired. She was mad. Things passed as the night before. D'Artagnan concealed himself in the closet. Milady called, undressed, sent away Kitty, and shut the door. As the night before, D'Artagnan did not return home till 5 o'clock in the morning. At 11 o'clock, Kitty came to him. She held in her hand a fresh billet from Milady. This time the poor girl did not even argue with D'Artagnan. She gave it to him at once. She belonged body and soul to her handsome soldier. D'Artagnan opened the letter and read as follows: "This is the third time I have written to you, to tell you that I love you. Beware that I do not write to a fourth time, to tell you that I detest you. If you repent of the manner in which you have acted toward me, the young girl who brings you this will tell you how a man of spirit may obtain his pardon." D'Artagnan colored and grew pale several times in reading the billet. "Oh, you love her still," said Kitty, who had not taken her eyes off the young man's countenance for an instant. "No, Kitty, you are mistaken. I do not love her, but I will avenge myself for her contempt." "Oh, yes, I know what sort of vengeance. You told me that. What matters it to you, Kitty? You know it is all you alone whom I love." "How can I know that?" "By the scorn I will throw upon her." D'Artagnan took a pen and wrote, "Madame, until the present moment I could not believe that it was to me your first two letters were addressed. So unworthy did I feel myself of such an honor. Besides, I was so seriously indisposed that I could not in any case have replied to them. But now I am forced to believe in the excess of your kindness, since not only your letter, but your servant assures me that I have the good fortune to be beloved by you, so has no occasion to teach me the way in which a man of spirit may obtain his pardon. I will come and ask mine at 11 o'clock this evening. To delay it a single day would be in my eyes now to commit a fresh offense. From him whom you have rendered the happiest of men, Comte de Wardes." This note was in the first place a forgery. It was likewise an indelicacy. It was even, according to our present manners, something like an infamous action. But at that period people did not manage affairs as they do today. Besides, D'Artagnan, from her own admission, knew Milady culpable of treachery in matters more important, and could entertain no respect for her. And yet, notwithstanding this want of respect, he felt an uncontrollable passion for this woman, boiling to his veins, passion drunk with contempt, but passion or thirst, as the reader pleases. D'Artagnan's plan was very simple. By Kitty's chamber he could gain that of her mistress. He would take advantage of the first moment of surprise, shame, and terror to triumph over her. He might fail, but something must be left to chance. In 8 days the campaign would be open, and he would be compelled to leave Paris. D'Artagnan had no time for prolonged love siege. "There," said the young man, handing Kitty the letter, sealed. "Give that to Milady. It is the Count's reply." Poor Kitty became as pale as death. She suspected that what the letter contained. "Listen, my dear girl," said D'Artagnan. "You cannot but perceive that all this must end, some other way or another. Milady may discover that you gave me the first billet to my lackey instead of to the Count's. That is, I who have opened the letters, which ought to have been opened by de Wardes. Milady will then turn you out of doors, and you know she is not the woman to limit her vengeance." "Alas," said Kitty, "for whom I have exposed myself to all that. For me, I well know, my sweet girl," said D'Artagnan. "But I am grateful, I swear to you. But what does this note contain? Milady will tell you." "Ah, you do not love me," cried Kitty, "and I am very wretched." To this reproach there is always one response which deludes women. D'Artagnan replied in such a manner that Kitty remained in her great delusion. Although she cried freely before deciding to transmit the letter to her mistress, she did at last so decide, which was all D'Artagnan wished. Finally, he promised that he would leave her mistress presents at an early hour that evening, and that when he left the mistress he would ascend with the maid. This promise completed poor Kitty's consolation. Chapter 34, in which the equipment of Aramis and Porthos is treated of. Since the four friends had been each in search of his equipment, there had been no fixed meeting between them. They dined apart from one another, whenever or wherever they might happen to be, or rather where they could. Duty likewise, on its part, took a portion of what that precious time which was gilding away so rapidly. Only they agreed to meet once a week, about 1 o'clock, at the residence of Athos, seeing that he is in agreement with the vow he had formed, and did not pass over the threshold of his door. This day of reunion was the same day as that which Kitty came to find D'Artagnan. Soon as Kitty left him, D'Artagnan directed his steps towards the Rue Férou. He found Athos and Aramis philosophizing. Aramis had some slight inclination to resume the cassock. Athos, according to his system, neither encouraged nor dissuaded him. Athos believed that everyone should be left to his own free will. He never gave advice but when it was asked, and even then he required to be asked twice. People in general, he said, only ask for advice not to follow it, or if they do follow it, it is for the sake of having someone to blame for having given it. Porthos arrived a minute after D'Artagnan. The four friends were reunited. The four countenances expressed four different feelings: that of Porthos, tranquillity; that of D'Artagnan, hope; that of Aramis, uneasiness; and that of Athos, carelessness. At the end of the moment's conversation, in which Porthos hinted that a lady of elevated rank had condescended to relieve him from his embarrassment, Mousquetin entered. He came to the request of his master to return to his lodgings, where at present was urgent, as he piously said, "It is my equipment." "Yes and no," replied Mousquetin. "Well, but can't you speak? Come, monsieur." Porthos rose and saluted his friends, and followed Mousquetin. An instant after, Bazin made his appearance on the floor. "What do you want with me, my friend?" said Aramis, with that mildness of language which was observable in him every time that his ideas were directed toward the church. "A man wishes to see monsieur at home," replied Bazin. "A man? What man?" "A mendicant." "Give him alms, Bazin, and bid him pray for a poor sinner. This mendicant insists upon speaking to you, and pretends that you will be very glad to see him. Has he sent no particular message for me?" "Yes. If Monsieur Aramis hesitates to come," he said, "tell him I am from Tours." "From Tours!" cried Aramis. "1,000 pardons, gentlemen, but no doubt this man brings me news, and I expected." And rising also, he went off at a quick pace. There remained Athos and D'Artagnan. "I believe these fellows have managed their business. What do you think, D'Artagnan?" said Athos. "I know that Porthos was in a fair way," replied D'Artagnan. "And as to Aramis, to tell you the truth, I have never been seriously uneasy on his account. But you, my dear Athos, you who so generously distributed the Englishman's pistoles, which were our legitimate property, what do you mean to do?" I am satisfied with having killed that fellow, my boy, seeing that it blessed bread to kill an Englishman. But if I had pocketed his pistoles, they would have weighed me down like a remorse. Go to my dear Athos. You have truly inconceivable ideas. Let it pass. What do you think of Monsieur de Treville telling me, when he did tell me, that he honored to call me and call upon me yesterday, that you associated with the suspected English, whom the cardinal protects? That is to say, I visit an Englishwoman, the one I named to you. Oh, I, the fair woman on whose account I gave you advice, which naturally you took care not to adopt. I gave you my reasons. Yes, you look there for your outfit, I think you said. Not at all. I have acquired certain knowledge that a certain woman was concerned in the abduction of Madame Bonchenou. Yes, I understand now. To find the woman, you court another. It is the longest road, but certainly the most amusing. D'Artagnan was on the point of telling Athos all, but one consideration restrained him. Athos was a gentleman, punctilious in points of honor, and there were in the plan which our lover had devised for Milady, he was sure, certain things that he would not obtain the assent of his Puritan. He was therefore silent, and as Athos was the least inquisitive of any man on earth, D'Artagnan's confidence stopped there. We will therefore leave the two friends, who had nothing of importance to say to each other, and follow Aramis. Upon being informed that the person who wanted to speak to him came from Tours, we have seen with what rapidity the young man followed, or rather went before, Bazin. He ran without stopping from the Rue Férou to the Rue des Vaugirard. On entering, he found a man on short stature and intelligent eyes, but covered with rags. You have asked for me, said the Musketeer. I wish to speak with Monsieur Aramis. Is that your name, monsieur? My very own. You have brought me something? Yes, if you show me a certain embroidered handkerchief. Here it is, said Aramis, taking a small key from his breast and opening a little ebony box inlaid with mother of pearl. Here it is, look. That's it, replied the mendicant. Dismiss your lackey. In fact, Bazin, curious to know what the mendicant could want with his master, kept pace with him as well as he could, and arrived almost at the same time as he did. But his quickness was not much use to him. At the hint of the mendicant of his master, it made him sign to retire, and he was obliged to obey. Bazin gone, the mendicant cast a rapid glance around him in order to be sure that nobody could either see or hear him, and opening his ragged vest, badly held together with a leather strap, began to rip the upper part of his doublet, from which he drew a letter. Aramis uttered a cry of joy at the sight of the seal, kissed the superstition with an almost religious respect, and opened the epistle, which contained the follows: My friend, it is the will of fate that we should be still and for some time separated, but the delightful days of youth are not lost beyond return. Perform your duty in camp. I will do mine elsewhere. Accept that which the brewer brings you. Make the campaign like a handsome true gentleman, and think of me, who kisses tenderly your black eyes. The mendicant continued to rip his garments, and threw from amid his rags 150 Spanish double pistoles, which he laid down on the table. Then he opened the door, bowed, and went out before the young man, stupefied by the letter, had ventured to address a word to him. Aramis then repursed the letter and perceived the postscript. P.S. You may believe politely to the bearer, who is a count, but a grandee of Spain. Golden dreams, cried Aramis. Oh, beautiful life. Yes, we are young. Yes, We shall yet have happy days. My love, my blood, my life, all are thine, my adored mistress. And he kissed the letter with passion, without even vouching for a single gold which sparkled on the table. Bazin scratched the door, and as Aramis had no longer any reason to exclude him, he bade him come in. Bazin was stupefied at the sight of the gold, and forgot what he had come to announce to D'Artagnan, who, curious to know, had been the mendicant, and who he could be if he came here to Aramis, leaving Athos. Now D'Artagnan used no ceremony with Aramis. Seeing that Bazin forgot to announce him, he announced himself. "The devil, my dear Aramis," said D'Artagnan, "if these are the prunes that are sent to you from Tours, I beg you will make my compliments to the gardener who gathers them." "You are mistaken, my friend D'Artagnan," said Aramis, always on guard. "This is from my publisher, who has just sent me the price of the poem in one-syllable verse, which I began yonder." "Ah, indeed," said D'Artagnan. "Well, your publisher is very generous, my dear Aramis. That's all I can say." "How, monsieur?" cried Bazin. "A poem sell so dear as that? It is incredible. Oh, monsieur, you can write as much as you like. You may become equal to Monsieur de Voltaire." "And Monsieur de Bessonade? Monsieur Benisarde? I like that. A poet is as good as an abbé." "Ah, Monsieur Aramis, become a poet, I beg you." "Bazin, my friend," said Aramis, "I believe you meddle with my conversation." Bazin perceived he was wrong. He bowed and went out. "Ah," said D'Artagnan with a smile, "you sell your productions at the weight of gold. You are very fortunate, my friend. But take care, or you will lose that letter which you keep peeping from your doublet, and which also comes, no doubt, from your publisher." Aramis blushed to the eyes, crammed in the letter with rebuttoned his doublet. "My dear D'Artagnan," said he, "if you please, we will join our friends. As I am rich, we will today begin to dine together again, expecting that you will be rich in your turn." "My faith," said D'Artagnan, "with great pleasure. It is long since we have had such good dinner, and I, for my part, have a somewhat haphazard and hazardous expedition for this evening, and shall not be sorry, I confess, to fortify myself with a few glasses of good old Burgundy." "Agreed. As to the old Burgundy, I have no objection to that," said Aramis, from which the letter and the gold had been removed as by magic, his ideas of conversation. And having put 3 or 4 double pistoles into his pocket to answer the needs of the moment, he placed the others in an ebony box, inlaid with mother of pearl, in which was the famous handkerchief, which served him as a talisman. The two friends repaired to Athos, and he, faithful to his vow of not going out, took upon him to order dinner to be brought to them, as he was perfectly acquainted with the details of gastronomy. D'Artagnan and Aramis made no objection, abandoning this important care to him. They went to find Porthos, and at the corner of Rue de Bac met Mousquetin, who, with the most pitiable air, was driving before him a mule and a horse. D'Artagnan uttered a cry of surprise, which was not quite free from joy. Ah, my yellow horse!" cried he. Aramis, who looked at the horse. "Oh, the frightful brute," says Aramis. "Ah, my dear," replied D'Artagnan, "upon the very horse. I came to Paris. What does monsieur know of this horse?" said Mousquetin. "If it is not the original color," said Aramis, "I never saw one with such a hide in all my life." "I can well believe," replied D'Artagnan, that was why I got 3 crowns for him. It must have been for his hide, for certes, the carcass is not worth 18 livres. But how did that horse become into the hands, Mousquetin? Pray, that Pray, said the lackey, say nothing about it, monsieur. It is a frightful trick of the husband on our duchess. How is that, Mousquetin? Why, we are looked upon with a rather favorable eye by the lady of the quality, the Duchess de... But your pardon. My master has commanded me to be discreet. She has forced us to accept a little less souvenir, a magnificent Spanish gannet, and an Andalusian mule, which were beautiful to look at and to look upon. The husband heard of the affair on their way, and he confiscated 2 magnificent beasts which were being sent to us, and substituted these horrible animals. Which you are taking back to him, said D'Artagnan. Exactly, replied Mousquetin. You may well believe that we may not accept such steeds, but as these in exchange for those which had been promoted and promised to us. No, pardieu. Though I should like to have seen Porthos on my yellow horse, that which I would give an idea of how it looked when I arrived in Paris. But don't let us hinder you, Mousquetin. Go to the office. Go and perform your master's orders. Is he at home? Yes, monsieur, said Mousquetin, but in very ill humor. Get up! He continued his way towards the Quai des Gardes, Augustins. While the 2 friends went to ring the bell of the unfortunate Porthos, he, having seen them crossing the yard, took care not to answer, and they rang again in vain. Meanwhile, Mousquetin continued on his way, and crossing the Pont Neuf, still driving the two sorry animals before him, he reached the Rue aux Ours. Arrived there, he fastened, according to the orders of his master, both horse and mule to the knocker of the procurator's door. Then, without taking any thought for their future, he returned to Porthos, and told him that his commission was completed. In a short time, the 2 unfortunate beasts, who had not eaten anything since morning, made such a noise in the raising and letting fall the knocker, that the procurator ordered his errand boy to go and inquire in the neighborhood to whom this horse and mule belonged. Madame Coquenard recognized her present, and could not at first comprehend this restitution, but the visit of Porthos soon enlightened her. The anger which fired the eyes of the musketeer, in spite of his efforts to suppress it, terrified his sensitive inamorata. In fact, Mousquetin had not concealed from his master that he had met D'Artagnan and Aramis, and that D'Artagnan, in the yellow horse, had recognized the Bernese pony upon which he had come to Paris, and on which he had sold for 3 crowns. Porthos went away after having appointed a meeting with the procurator's wife in the cloister at Saint Magloire. The procurator, seeing he was going, invited him to dinner, an invitation which a musketeer refused with a majestic air. Madame Coquenard repaired trembling to the cloister of the Saint Magloire, for she guessed the reproaches that waited her there. But she was fascinated by the lofty airs of Porthos. All that which a man wounded in his self-love could fall in the shape of imprecations and reproaches upon the head of a woman, Porthos let fall upon and bowed head of the procurator's wife. Alas, said she, I did all for the best. One of our clients is a horse dealer. He owes money to the office, and is backward in his pay. I took the mule and the horse for what he owed, and assured me that they were 2 noble steeds. Well, madame, said Porthos, if he owed you more than 5 crowns, your horse dealer is a thief. There is no harm in trying to buy things cheap, Monsieur Porthos, said the procurator's wife, seeking to excuse herself. No, madame, but they who are so assiduously trying to buy things cheap ought to permit others to seek more generous friends. And Porthos, turning on his heel, made a step to retire. Monsieur Porthos, cried the procurator's wife, I have been wrong. I see it. I ought not to have driven a bargain when it was to equip a cavalier like you. Porthos, without reply, retreated a second step. The procurator's wife fancied she saw him in a brilliant cloud, all surrounded by duchesses and marchionesses, who cast bags of money at his feet. Stop, in the name of heaven, Monsieur Porthos, cried she. Stop, and let us talk. Talking with you brings me misfortune, said Porthos. But tell me, what do you ask? Nothing, for that amounts to the same thing as if I asked you something. The procurator's wife hung upon the arm of Porthos, and, in the violence of her grief, she cried out, Monsieur Porthos, I am ignorant of all such matters. How should I know what is a horse? How should I know what a horse's furniture is? You should have left it to me, then, madame, who know what they are, but you wish to be frugal, and consequently to lend at usury. It was wrong, Monsieur Porthos, but I will repair that wrong, upon my word of honor. How so? Asked the Musketeer. Listen, this evening, Monsieur Coquenard is going to the house at the Duc de Chalonnais, who has sent for him. It is for a consultation, which will last 3 hours at least. Come, we shall be alone, and can make up our accounts in good time. Now you talk, my dear. You pardon me? We shall see, said Porthos majestically, and the two separated, saying, Till this evening. Till this evening. The devil, thought Porthos, as he walked away. It appears I am getting nearer to Monsieur Coquenard's strong box at last. Well, my friends, things are getting very interesting. So much espionage, so many secrets in these courts of ladies and gentlemen, so much money that must be promised and procured for a campaign of war against England. So interesting, these goings on, all of these mysteries. I can't wait to see what happens in chapter 35. All right, that's all for tonight. Love to you all. This has been Indiana Holmes. I'll see you tomorrow night. Good night.
Please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. Thank you very much.